and you get a feeling of who the players in the marketplace are, who might still yet sign. I mean, for example, it won't surprise you guys. I know you've been talking about it. We expect Tavares will sign extension in Toronto. Well, I would think that'll be done 2 weeks from now if it's going to happen. So, there's still a few parts, I guess, that are moving in various places. But when you get down to this few teams still playing, the business of the offseason is going to start to kick into full force here come early June.
So to follow on Tavares, do you feel like that deal has been done for weeks and months, and basically what just happened in the playoffs is effectively irrelevant?
I don't know. I don't think certainly the deal is done. There were definitely conversations throughout this season where I think both sides got a sense of where they would want to go with the contract and how that would look. And now I think it's time to figure out the details of what that might look like. But it doesn't mean they'll reach a deal. I mean, just because the Leafs want to keep Tavares and Tavares wants to stay, it's a not an insignificant matter of, what his next deal looks like that would have to be agreed upon before it happens. And by no means do I have an impression that's done. So I suppose there's still a universe where it doesn't, wind up the way that Tavares is hoping it does. And maybe there's an opportunity there for the Leafs to, try to, I don't want to say take advantage of, because that's probably the wrong phrasing, but use the fact that he's so eager to stay to help out what they need here. Because let's face it, if you have Austin Matthews signed next year, we're talking about the certainties, the Leafs probably need to acquire two centers to play behind him for next year. Now, maybe Max Domi is the solution. I can't imagine the organization's feeling that way after seeing the way the year played out. Scott Lawton's under contract next year, but he didn't really use him in the role that we thought they might when they traded for him at the deadline. So you got to fill two center positions. There's not a lot in free agency. I think keeping Tavares makes a lot of sense, especially if the number's right. And so, it doesn't sound as though the talks have got going there yet, but once they do, we'll find out pretty quickly if the numbers can line up to make that happen.
So the role Brendan Shanahan played in selling this team and market to free agents, how significant was that in your opinion, and how significant might his departure be in terms of the way the rest of the league and the agents, most importantly, view the Maple Leafs?
I actually think, because you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, what did he do?" Right? Because it wasn't always clear to anyone on the outside, what the impression was. But I think it's a big loss for the organization in terms of a lot of that sort of thing. I mean, I listened to your highlights and lowlights yesterday, Hayes. I thought you nailed it. But getting Mike Babcock to Toronto, Shanahan had a massive role in that at the time, and of course that was a big coup at the time. Mike Babcock was basically a marquee free agent in his own, right at that point in time. I think sort of making sure there's the right luster to the brand, that certain situations are handled properly. I think of, this isn't exactly the spirit of your question, but when Borje Salming, got his ALS diagnosis, the Leafs were heavily involved in making sure they could get Borje over here for a game, and they sent an alumni team over to Sweden to play, in his honor and things like that. So, I don't know where those responsibilities fall now. I think it's too much to expect the general manager, who day to day you want out there beating the bushes, looking for upgrades for the fourth line right wing spot, and for considering trade options and negotiating contracts. I mean, having someone with the organization's big picture in mind, and that could probably go down to even wooing free agents. There is a loss there, and I wonder in time. I mean, Keith Pelley certainly didn't sound like he's looking to get a president today, but I wonder in time if that void is filled in some way, shape, or form by a future hire. But in the here and now, Brad Treliving's got a lot on his plate. That would have been the case had Shanahan stayed, but I think it's even more, as they navigate these next few weeks, how they manage the Marner situation, how they look to potentially replace him and use his dollars in the lineup, trade opportunities, the draft. I mean, this is a critical offseason, because the biggest thing I left that news conference today thinking was, a step back next year is not an option for Leafs ownership. I mean, any world where they lose in the first round, or anything that we might point to where the team didn't grow next season, it makes it seem like we're going to have another round of these press conferences and be talking about big changes to the organization if that is what happens on the ice.
Yeah, I'm curious, if Pelly and ownership, for that matter, have someone in mind that they don't feel they can get right now, to play that role of president. Maybe they have someone in mind down the road. But I'm curious what you think the Leafs' appetite would be to sign another player to a big contract. In other words, Marner leaves. Let's say they bring Tavares back. It sounds like it's trending in that direction, but he signs for $5 or $6 million or whatever. There's been all this conversation about the core four and all this money and all of it tied up in a certain amount of players. What if they got a guy in mind that they like, but they got to pay him $10 million? Do you think they'd be willing to do that, or do you think they're finally going to get away from that and say, well, we're paying Austin, we're paying Willie, and we're not paying anyone else close? We got to spread the rest of the money out.
I think as an organization, they would consider it, but I don't see a $10 million player available in free agency if you're not signing Mitch Marner. I mean, who else on the board will be getting that kind of contract? I don't think it's out there for any of those guys. I mean, that's part of the challenge, though, is there's not, after Marner, there's lots of good players, and there'll be good signings made this summer, but there's not a lot of sure things among the other free agents that are available. And so I don't know if you're sort of pointing me in the direction of Sam Bennett here. I have a hard time believing he's going to get that kind of money anywhere, let alone in Toronto. I think he'd like to stay in Florida, is kind of my understanding of things now, and so he might not even hit the open market. So I think the market will probably drive the decision more than anything, and to me, it's pointing the Leafs in the direction of some smaller bets, and you got to keep the powder dry a little bit. I think they have to be careful of how long, and how big the commitments are to other players. Because to me, if you're any team in the league that's trying to win a cup in the near term, until Connor McDavid's future is 100% secure, you got to keep yourself in a spot where you could make that happen if it could happen. So by no means am I trying to start a McDavid to the Leafs rumor. It's not really what I'm saying, but I think until his situation in Edmonton and until he signs an extension there, and if he doesn't, I think you want to leave the opportunity for that to happen for your team. And so, obviously the Leafs are going to be active, I would think, in free agency. They've got money to spend and some holes to fill, but it's probably only to a point, because you got to stay in the big game hunting that might happen in 2026 and beyond.
All right, CJ. We'll leave it there, and it's going to be interesting times over the next month and a half. That is for sure. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for saying
No problem,
overdrive in your comments, too.
Yeah, it was well played.
Very good.
Perfectly dropped punt.
Well, when I'm not on the show, I listen to it. So, I'm the biggest fan out there.
We appreciate it, buddy.
We know that's not true, but thanks very much for that.
Hey, I referenced the highlights and lowlights.
That's right.
I was listening yesterday.
That list popped off, man. I thought I nailed it personally, and I don't say that often. I don't pump my own tires very often.
He only pumps his own tires every time he does that segment, CJ. Thanks for taking time today, pal. We'll do it next week.
All right, have a good weekend, fellas.
See you, buddy. Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider. Yeah, listen.
I watched those lists. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I thought they were pretty lean.
You thought they were lean in terms of what the highlights were. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what do you think
There hasn't been any noodles. Where was he supposed to
won
go?
2 rounds. What could it be?
I'm not saying that from your standpoint.
Oh,
Brian.
I see.
I thought you did an excellent job.
You're saying it
I
kind of
just
shines a
go-
light of what the reality has been.
The reality was they were lean accomplishments in 11 years. That's my point. I thought your lists were fantastic, grade A, top notch. But I was
I wouldn't say that personally, but I'm glad you said it. Thank you.
I'm proud of them. And I was talking to somebody last night about them, and I was like, God, that list is